Check 1 2. 10 minutes till start of live stream. I'm sorry, I don't work here. I work for the television station.
I thought maybe you know who like
Bring them on. That clock's a little fast. That gives us a little bit of a advance warning when it's time to roll. So, according to the iPhone, we're still a minute away. So, bear with us just a minute. You know, I don't think you want that this morning. So. All I know is Amazing Grace, so maybe that would be appropriate. Mr. Speaker. Doing all right? Good to see you. Good to see you. I think this is going to be good this morning. Been a busy week. Yeah. Plenty of material today. A minute's a long time when you're waiting. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dave Crouch, and this is the legislative update presented monthly by Williamson, Inc., our Williamson County Chamber of Commerce, and we enjoy having these discussions every month with our legislative delegation from Williamson County. We appreciate your being here in the live audience here at Columbia State and on this beautiful campus that we're able to enjoy here. Also appreciate our TV audience with WCTV watching us, and the radio audience from WAKM. Hope you all enjoy the program this morning. We've got with us this morning all of our legislative delegation from Williamson County, our majority leader of the Senate, our 23rd District State Senator Jack Johnson, our Tennessee Speaker of the House, Glenn Cassida, also our 63rd District State Representative, and from the 65th District, Sam Whitson, State Representative, and from the 61st, Brandon Ogles. Gentlemen, we appreciate you taking time to be here, and it's been an interesting week. Sounds like y'all have been really busy, and we look forward to delving into some of the things that have been going on. I will mention this morning I'll moderate things for most of the session today, and then at the end we will try to save some time for questions and answers if you have things that you would like to ask these gentlemen. The big news this week was about education savings accounts and vouchers. Lots of unusual negotiations going on, I think, both in the House and the Senate. Glenn, the House was a little ahead of the Senate in getting something passed along the lines that the governor had requested to provide school choice. Tell us how that went. There was a little 40-minute delay in getting a final vote, I think. How does all that work?
It was a very close vote, and actually when the board closed, it was 49-49, and I just met with a couple of members and said, do we want to continue on the same track we're on, which is keeping children in these failing schools, or do we want to take a step in a direction of thinking outside the box? We're talking 5,000 children out of a school population in the state of 1.1 million children. Let's let's try something outside the box. And so I spoke to a couple of members, and one said, well, two of them actually said, Glenn, okay, let's try it. Let's support the governor. Let's support the president. This is a President Trump initiative as well, and let's do it. And so we were at 49-49 to 51-47 after about 40 minutes of discussions, and we passed it. And so got a few differences between the Senate and the House version, but we will work that out. And again, this is a child-focused initiative trying to help children that are in these failing schools. One other thing that I want to stress is not only does it only affects 2 counties, or at the end of the day will only affect 2 counties. One other thing that I hear a lot is, well, let's put more money into public education. Well, for the past 8 years in these failing schools and across the state, we've put $1.8 billion, that's with a B, new dollars, and it's helped most of the schools. We've put in reading teachers and teachers' aides, and the list is long that we've tried to help these failing schools, and it's just not working. So and my urging to those that disagree with this, let's think outside the box. If what you're doing isn't working, let's try a little 5,000, up to 15,000 student outside the box change, and let's move forward and see if that works. And if it doesn't work, we'll scrap it and we'll do something else. And so I was proud that we passed it. I'm proud to support the governor, proud to support the leader here. It was his bill. He was the leader, and thus he is in charge of navigating that bill, and our president. And so I'm glad we did it in the House.
Jack, got a brand new senator that cast his first vote a little unexpectedly in favor of the voucher bill after campaigning against it. How does that work? How do you make that happen?
Well, I don't know that it. Okay. Hello. All right. There we go. I don't know that he campaigned against it. I would challenge on that. I think he was asked about a lot of misinformation about the ESA bill, and that happens.
That's why we're here, just to get the
So
real story.
I spent, I probably spent 2 hours yesterday afternoon on the phone with teachers, constituents, school board members, talking about the bill. And in most every case, once people understand what it is and what we're doing, and understand how much misinformation is out there, they say, oh, well, that makes sense. I mean, no, the world's not going to end. Public education's not going to just crash and burn because we passed this very narrow, limited pilot program, and it is a pilot. And Glenn is exactly right that we have 1 million kids in K through 12 in public schools in Tennessee. This plan, if fully implemented, would be 15,000 kids in 2 LEAs, the 2 LEAs in the state. That the Senate bill is. The House bill is a little different, but have the highest concentration of failing schools. And as Glenn said, despite all of the reforms we've done over the past 10 years, we've made tremendous gains with most of our kids, according to the NAEP scores. But where we're not moving the needle is in those inner city failing schools. And so this is one of the things that has worked in some other states. And again, Bill Lee, our governor, campaigned on this. I mean, this was a principal component of his campaign for governor. He won the state overwhelmingly. I think he got 70% of the vote in Williamson County, and President Trump has been very supportive of this as well. So we want to get it passed. We want to do it, and I think we will. The vote in the Senate was 20 to 13. So it was a good, solid vote there. We do have a brand new senator, Bill Powers, from Montgomery County. He was elected Tuesday in a special election. He had decided he wanted to do his ceremonial swearing in on Monday so that family could travel to be here with him for that very special occasion. And yes, the governor did call and say, hey, we've got a very important vote here, and would you come on in? So he came in yesterday morning, and Chief Justice Jeff Bivens was there in the governor's office and swore him in, and he came in to cast a vote, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, he's duly constitutionally elected. He can show up and get sworn in and cast a vote. And he knew how important this was for the governor, and so we did. We would have had it without his vote, but it was important that he be there to support it. So, and again, we can go into as many of the details. We spent a good bit of time on it last month. Happy to talk to anyone about it. It's a good plan. It's a good plan. It's very narrow. It's focused, intense accountability, measurement to see if this is going to work. And it'll take years to see if it works. That's the thing. This is not something you just flip the switch and you automatically see results. But expanding educational choice is important. And let's remember, we as a state have a challenge. We have a responsibility to see that kids are educated. We do that with most of our kids through a public school system, okay? And that we have created. The state has created a public education institution in Tennessee, and that's what we use. When that is failing kids, we absolutely, as a state, have not only the right, but the responsibility to do something different. And these dollars are appropriated not to go to a public school. They're appropriated to educate a child. And so if we decide that the dollars need to follow the kid into another type of educational environment that's better for that child, there's nothing wrong with that, and that's what we're going to do.
Yeah, I would encourage you, if you missed the program last month, it is available on YouTube video at the WCTV.
And on my
website.
Facebook page.
On Jack's Facebook page. And Jack went into a really clear discussion about his position on it last month, and so we won't spend too much time on that this month. But there is another side of the story, though. Sam, you voted against it. I understand. And tell us your thoughts about it.
Well, I was the middle child, so I'm used to this, okay? So, if you know what sibling order there. Listen, Jack is right. The governor ran on this, so that's no surprise. And I voted for our governor, and he won overwhelmingly. And during my campaign, my concern was a growth component in the BEP, and I established that until we can solve that, I'm not a fan of vouchers, and for various reasons. And there's good points for vouchers that the senator talked about, but to me, there's other concerns about it. So I knew I had a problem when the governor won, and I won, and I got nearly 80% of the vote in our county. And so I went to my speaker, my leader, my advisor, and I said, Glenn, I got a problem. And I said, this is what I campaigned on. I got to stand by that. And Glenn said, look, and he said, you stay by your word. Consider, though, what the governor is offering, though. But he said, look, you vote your district, vote your conscience, and I'll back you up, okay? So that's the only time we talked about vouchers the whole time I was up there. No promises, no pressure. To me, it was a vote, a commitment that I made early on, and so I sleep good at night. And listen, I'm still a big fan and supporter of our governor, okay? And I'm a big fan and supporter of my speaker, and I'm a big fan and supporter of my senator, okay? And but they are going to work out the difference, okay? But I still going to continue to take the position I have, and I just don't want people to get angry about it, okay? On both sides, please. Let's just system work. There are other great initiatives that we're working on up there too, and but I will continue to take my position on that, and I look forward to continue to working with my colleagues on other issues.
Brandon, how did you ultimately decide how to vote on this one?
Well, this was a hard vote for me originally, because when I first heard about what a voucher was while I was campaigning versus what this bill is at present day when we voted is very different. And some of the issues I had with the bill actually got amended. That was part of the behind-the-scenes process of how what we do works. I needed specifically for Williamson County Schools to be safeguarded, and I said that. And the bill was amended, and that was done. This will never affect Williamson County Schools. It's not going to take any money away from our district. This is specifically targeted for those failing districts. So once that was done, and once the program was, I would say, throttled back, it's now a pilot program. The numbers have been cut in half. What's max is 15? We didn't have those safeguards before, but that was part of the process for people like me to protect my specific school district, what we had to have to feel good about that vote. And I do support my governor, and I trust him, and he's done some amazing things and will champion public education. But this is not, the sky's not falling. He's not going to degrade public education. He's not trying, there's no cynical motives in place. He loves these children in these schools, and he's going to work hard to fix these school systems. So with that, I mean, the one thing I'm sad about is the messaging right now. This bill as passed is not anything close to what was presented originally, and it will never hurt our schools. It will never hurt Williamson County schools.
That, Sam made a good point, and I started to open my remarks with the point that we need to respect others' opinions and be able to have good civil discussions about these things, even though the emotions on both sides are very, very high. And just appreciate the opportunity we have here to do that, and the way you all help us understand these things. Now, there are some significant differences, Jack, between the Senate and the House version. Tell us what those differences are, and then if you all can tell us how that's going to get resolved.
Sure. The version that we passed yesterday, so it originally as proposed by the governor, it would have included, the intent with the bill was always to have a line in the sand in terms of eligibility for school districts that would be eligible to participate. And originally that line was drawn such that it would have included Shelby County, Davidson County, Hamilton, Knox, and Madison County. And then the Achievement School District, which is a state run for priority schools, some of the worst performing schools, but they're already included. Conversations on the Senate side were, look, this is 15,000, it's capped at 15,000. There was a version that was at 30,000. Brandon is exactly right. But ultimately, when we got to it, if it's going to be 15,000 kids, there's two objectives here for this. One is to obviously help kids. That's the number one objective, is to get these kids out of these failing schools and into a better educational environment. The other is to gather data and to figure out how this works. We can look at other states. Florida has had tremendous success with this, and I talked about that some last month. But you still don't know how it's going to work in Tennessee. What's the participation rate going to be? There are just a lot of different factors. And so the decision was made to concentrate it more in two LEAs so that the monitoring and that the data collection would be better. You would have enough data, from those districts. And quite frankly, and I'm not picking on them, there are socioeconomic factors involved, but the vast concentration of these failing schools are in Shelby County schools and Davidson County schools. And so that's where we should focus our energy. So the Senate version of the bill takes it down to those two districts, Shelby County schools, not to be confused with the entire county of Shelby County, because there are multiple school systems in Shelby County, but the one that has the failing schools is Shelby County schools. There was some consolidation that took place in Shelby County, and then Davidson County schools, Metro Davidson, which is the entire county of those schools. So it's limited to that. Up to 15,000 kids. Everything else remains the same. If a child uses an LEA, goes to a private school, we backfill that money to the district for 3 years. So they get all the money that they previously were going to get for a child, but they don't have the child to educate. So that increases the per capita student funding in those districts. So they get more money. I'm still getting emails and calls, you're taking money out of public schools. No, we're not. We're putting more money into public schools, specifically those that have kids leave for the LEA. After the 3 years, they get to keep their local portion. In Shelby County, they spend about $12,000 a year per child. The ESA is $7,300. Now they get that replaced for the first 3 years, and then after that, any local money they were putting into that school remains. So they get to keep $4,700 a year after the 3 years. So it's a cash infusion to these schools, and we've budgeted $25 million a year to fund this. So all of those elements remain the same. That's a critical difference. There was some debate about homeschooling. Should you be able to participate in the Senate version of the bill does include homeschooling if the homeschool family is under an umbrella organization that offers testing, and that's a big component.
How do you know if a homeschool is failing?
Well, because they're participating in an umbrella organization and they're taking the same test as the public school kids.
Okay, so if the mom or dad that's doing the teaching's not doing a good job, then they get to go to.
Well, that's an oversimplification of homeschooling, Dave. I mean, a lot of homeschool
I get
families.
to ask the question.
I know. That's all right. That's all right.
But,
Well,
that's
let's clear that up because you're going to.
Confusion I had about all this.
Yeah, so a lot of homeschool families, they do some of the teaching at home, but they're in a umbrella organization. They're part of a group. You know, they work with other families, and so they come together for instruction and classes. And that is recognized by the Department of Education. And through that umbrella organization, we can assess them, we can take tests, we can require them to take the necessary tests to again get the data. We want to know how these kids are doing. Are they proceeding better? So that's a difference between the Senate and the House version of the bill. Otherwise, I think they're pretty close.
Okay. Conference committee, how does that get worked out?
They'll send the bill over to us. We will not recede from our actions for the purpose of going to a conference committee. We will conform to the two counties. There's no doubt in my mind we'll go with that. The homeschooling issue, the House does look at it a little differently, so that'll be on the table to discuss. And the illegal immigration, we're going to look at that as well. So those are of the three primary differences. One that will be easily solved. The other two we'll work around it and figure it out because we do want this to pass.
Another major bill, Sam, that you have had a significant part of is what's now being called the Katie Beckett bill. And we didn't get into it very deeply last month, but tell us what that bill does. You're the sponsor. There's, I think, like 80 of your colleagues that are signed on with you on that. Tell us what it does and where it is.
Well, thank you, Dave, for a chance to explain that. Katie Beckett, and we briefly talked about it last time. In 1980, when President Reagan started taking a look at how he could reform Medicaid, he discovered a young lady named Katie Beckett who was, because her family made too much money, if they brought her home from the hospital for her care, the Medicaid coverage would stop. But it cost so much more for her to be institutionalized for that care. So, of course, President Reagan, being a very common sense president, said this is not right. So we can do better services, we keep families together. But what the tragic part about that was that the families now in Tennessee, to get this coverage for Medicaid, we're talking about the most severely disabled children with the most complex medical problems. We're talking about children between 1 and 18. Generally, unfortunately, they don't live past to 18 because of the complexity of their medical conditions. But their families, to qualify, in which they can qualify for, if they get a divorce, quit their job, separate, give up custody. It's just fundamentally not right in what we stand for. So nearly 80 of my colleagues have signed on with the leadership of my speaker, who I think that's the only time you called me to your office this session, is how we're going to get this done. And we worked with the Tennessee Disability Coalition, the Department of Intellectual and Developmental Disability, TennCare. And I tell you, TennCare is a very complicated program. As the budget is unbelievable. For every dollar we spend from the state of Tennessee, we get 2 from the federal government. So there's always strings attached. So what we have to do to start this program is to get a waiver from the U.S. government to do this. Now, there's various types of these waivers across the country. We're I think the only state that does not offer that right now. So we got to be careful that we contain the costs, that we establish the eligibility for this, and we come up with a $27 million program that we put in the budget, in the House budget, and it was approved in Budget Committee this week. Came through Brandon's sub in full, and it has overwhelming support. There is a lot of push for this across the state, and when you meet these families, it really gets to you. There's a little girl named Zoe that it makes you want to cry every time you see her, but she is absolutely the spokesperson for this program. So we're working on it. I'm looking forward to the governor helping us out on this as we continue to negotiate the budget down the road. And again, I'm the sponsor, but I tell you, it's a team effort. I mean, I got to give credit to Representative Matthew Hill as the chairman of the TennCare Subcommittee. He's the one that really said, we're going to do this, we're going to fund it, we're going to make it, we're going to get this thing through. And I really appreciate it. The speaker came on board first and said, we're going to do this, this is the right thing to do. And so we're continuing to push forward. That's just one of the great pieces of legislation that we have across the entire General Assembly, and I'm looking forward to being a small part of getting that thing through.
Let me chime in, Tom. We'll pass 320 bills in any given year, but of that 320, 300 are routine. They're just the state doing business. 20 to 25 are significant. And so to pass a bill of this breadth, it's Sam. It's amazing what Sam has done, and navigating through TennCare, navigating through the Department of Health, the representatives, the senators. It is a Herculean job, and Sam took that and ran the ball down the yard and punched it into the end zone. We're real close. Senate wants to do it. We want to do it. Got some differences, but we'll work that out. And so we're excited about this, and it's kudos to Sam for navigating the minefield. Trust me, it's a minefield.
Yes, and he warned me, never get involved with cockfighting, annexation, and judges. But also, there's another bill we have, Dave, I could also, that we got great support on, is the establishing an Alzheimer's Council under the Commission of Aging and Disability in the state. And we're creating a new 12-member board to look at this pending health crisis we have in Tennessee. 1 in 3 people in here, we either have Alzheimer's or have a family member that they have to deal with it. Baby boomers are getting older. I think at one time baby boomers made up 40% of our population. Now it's 20%, but that is going to represent a significant problem for our state. We don't know right now exactly how much that's going to cost. It's going to be devastating to our economy, to our healthcare system. So we're going to take a jump on that, have this council to help us develop measures that we can deal with this and promote not only research, but also how do we help those who have to help those families with Alzheimer's.
Back to Katie Beckett just a minute. Jack, the Senate seems somewhat reluctant to just jump right in and approve that and hasn't done so, as I understand it, yet.
No, we have.
Oh, have you?
Yeah, we're, our budget came out of subcommittee yesterday, and it does include the Katie Beckett funding. There's 2 parts to Katie Beckett, and again, I want to echo what Glenn said. This I don't think we'd even be talking about this if it weren't for Sam. I mean, he has been a leader on this, and it's good too. I've learned a lot about it. So there's 2 parts. There's Part A, Part B. Part A are the cases where it's extraordinarily complex. Kids are required, need basically 24-hour care. They have to have someone with them 24 hours a day. And the way the fiscal note came back from fiscal review, and these are estimates, there's no real way to know this, but they estimate that there are about 300 families that would be benefit from this, and they put a price tag on each family of $150,000. So that's obviously $45 million. As Sam said, he's exactly right. It's a 2-to-1 match, so we would need to appropriate slightly over $15 million for that. Our budget includes the funding for that part. About $15.6 million, draw down about $30 million from the federal government to provide care to roughly 300 families at $150,000 a year. Part B, which is equally as important, but it's a little harder to quantify, because these are cases where the child doesn't necessarily need 24-hour nursing care, but these families need additional help. And so it might be just a few hours a week, it could be a few hours a day. It gets quite complicated. And so what we proposed in our budget, and again, we'll work this out between the House and the Senate. It's not a fight, I don't at all, because we all want to get this done. But the conversations in the Senate was, let's have TennCare go and study, how many of these other families for this additional care are needed, and to come back next year so we have a little bit clearer picture of what we're exposing ourselves to. And I don't need to remind anyone who in here who's been in Tennessee for very long, if you remember what happened with TennCare back when it was originally passed and it nearly broke the back of the state. We still have members that remember that, and so we want to tread carefully. We want to do it. We want to get it taken care of. So we may end up doing it all. We may, but we're gonna need to have some conversations, I think, between the House and the Senate. But there's no disagreement whatsoever that we need to move forward on it.
Yeah, for instance, you take a family that's making a total income of $110,000 a year. Of course, they don't qualify for Medicaid or any kind of federal benefits, but they have a child where the health care cost is $130,000 a year. And so what they do, they get a divorce or separate or give up custody so their child could get this care. But what we're going to also do in the Part B that Jack talked about is, and TennCare and DIDS will work out the rules on this, so it'll be kind of a sliding scale. They have to keep their private insurance. That has to offset that. But also, as the family makes more money, the amount that the coverage they get, we will probably adjust that down so we're just not breaking the program to make sure we get it to those who really need it.
I was a little confused when I was reading coverage on this. Is it tied to the Medicaid block grant issue, or is this a separate issue?
It's a separate, it will be a separate waiver request, separate from the block grant.
So where does the Medicaid block grant bill stand, Glenn?
We've, on the House, and I guess, did y'all pass that on the Senate side? Not on the floor yet. So this authorizes the governor and TennCare to go negotiate for block grants. And I like the Senate version. They put some really strict guardrails. So if CMS approves it, I think it would allow Tennessee to be the driver on this and not a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. But the bottom line is there's a whole lot of negotiations to even approach the thought of an in-depth conversation.
Did y'all hear Glenn said he likes the Senate version? You won't hear that very often. So.
But you did hear, though, Dave said we led first on actions in the House, okay?
Brandon, you've been, we hadn't picked on you much this morning, and the House budget, I'd let the Speaker lead off on this, but since you're on the House Budget Subcommittee, the House kind of got ahead of the Senate this year on the budget, and that, I understand, is very unusual. Is it hurting your feelings, Jack?
Not at all.
Okay. Tell us where we are on the budget.
Well, I would love to say it's because they've never had a freshman on that committee before, and we helped push it through, but that's not the case. Glenn really, from day one, he championed the fact that we're going to lead, we're going to push hard, we're going to get this budget going. A lot of long nights, a lot of hard work. If you can tell that I look like I need some sleep, I do. That committee puts in a lot of hours. I've loved being there. I'm doing way more listening than I am talking at this point. It's a very complicated process. But the fact that when we voted on it, we had a sea of green. He said that about 10 seconds too soon. It was the board was all green, and Glenn said, "Look at that sea of green," and somebody flipped, put a red up there just to spite him. And we do that sometimes to each other, just to almost just to poke each other. But it's been a good process. We've had a lot of good bills, really. So there's been an alignment. The behind the scenes, the late nights, it's just paid off. Leadership has really kind of cracked the whip on saying, we're going to be here, we're going to work, you're going to stay here till you're done. And we've pushed the process through, and the Senate's doing a good job as well. It's amazing to me to see how much these two are working together and how much back and forth. I always thought there was kind of a little bit of infighting, and I know we'll have that a little bit next week. But it's really a team effort, and the governor has done a great job working with us as well. So it's the alignment and the meetings and the open lines of communication, I would say, that helped champion it and run it so smoothly.
Let me brag a little bit on, on my peers. I mean, Jack drives the legislative agenda for the state of Tennessee. If it's a bill, especially if it comes out of the governor's office, Jack is front and center. Sam, of course, chairs one of our transportation committees and has taken a really amazing lead. They started traveling the state, working with solutions for the state. But I haven't got a chance to brag on Brandon. Brandon is, to my knowledge, the only freshman to ever serve on Budget Sub. Budget Sub is a committee on the House side made up of 9 members. It single-handedly drives the budget agenda for the House of Representatives. And there usually are 9 very experienced, everybody wants on that committee because it is the point of center on the finances for the state of Tennessee on the House side. And Brandon stepped in there as a freshman and is a heck of a team member. And part of the reason we're so successful is because our guys, there's 99 of us, 33 of y'all, so we have to, it's just more difficult because it's such a bigger body. But we did. Brandon and Sam worked his committee like rented mules, and Brandon worked long hours, and we pushed it through, and so I'm proud of these two, what they've accomplished, and I'm proud to serve with this one.
I'll have to say that with a freshman governor, a freshman representative here in the county, a freshman Speaker of the House, and a freshman Senate Majority Leader, I was totally prepared for this year to be pretty much a non-event while everybody figured out who was going to do what. But Brandon's taken a hold. He's learned to negotiate like a pro really quickly.
You know, it really makes you feel bad to be at
Sam,
10.
did you teach him how to do that?
No. I was going to say, you know, you kind of feel bad at 10 o'clock at night watching the news, having a drink, and watching Brandon and them still in committee down there. You think, oh my gosh, what did he sign up for?
I have to tell a funny story. I guess it was Monday night. We'd weaned some cows at home, and there was a lot of noise outside. And so I texted my neighbor apologizing for the calves begging for their mamas. And Jack said, no worries, they're not bothering me. I'm in the lieutenant governor's office working on the budget. So at least the cows didn't bother him. But a couple of things about the budget that appear to be different. And Jack, I want you to explain where the Senate is on this, but $225 million into the reserve fund. You know, to hear you all talk about all these bills and how much they cost and we can't afford them and all this, then to put $225 million in the rainy day fund kind of surprised me. What was the rationale there?
I'll start first. I've been up there 17 years, which is a long time, and I've seen 2 down years where you had to go back and cut. We had to cut TennCare. We had to cut a lot of services, especially in one of those years. And as a legislator, it burns that in your mind, and you say to yourself, never again will I have to go back and take things from people that depend upon it. And so the reaction is we put money in our savings account preparing for that next downturn so that we can live off the excess for a year or even 2. So it does seem maybe illogical to some regards, but if you've ever been there, it stays with you.
And let me also point out too, and I know this gets a little bit into the weeds, but if you just think about your family budget, you know, we have recurring sources of revenue, and then we have non-recurring. We have one-time money, and those pots come from various places. But just think about, you know, I've used this example before. You have a job, you get paid. As long as you keep your job, you know you can count on that money every month. Same with us in our budget. If your Aunt Edna passes away and leaves you $5,000 and you get a one-time windfall, you don't want to go out and act as if you're going to get that $5,000 every month or every year, right? That would be irresponsible. So the money that goes into the rainy day fund is one-time non-recurring money. So if someone says, well, gee whiz, you're talking about, you know, a $12 million difference on Katie Beckett here. Well, those recurring dollars are much harder to come by because those are the ones you're going to count on year after year after year. So we can't use the $225 million that we're putting in the rainy day fund to pay for Katie Beckett because it's one-time money. And so always make sure you're drawing a line between that. So if we have, one of the main sources of one-time money is because we're very conservative in our budget projections. Our budget is based off of revenue projections, so we're very conservative about what we estimate. And if we estimate that revenue will grow at 2.6% and it grows at 3%, so we have 0.4 of a percentage point, that comes to us the following year as one-time money. And then we establish a new base and we move forward. And so those are the dollars we're talking about putting in the rainy day fund.
Okay. And the Senate is going to vote on the budget. When?
We passed it out of subcommittee yesterday, and so it is now in our full finance committee, and we've had great conversations between the House and the Senate. We obviously have to negotiate with the House, and those conversations are ongoing because they've passed theirs on the floor. Our perfect scenario that we're all rooting for is that we can come up with an agreement between the two bodies. They now know what's in our budget, we know what's in their budget, and so we're going to have some negotiations. If we come up with an agreement, then the Senate can pass that budget in full finance on Monday, possibly even pass it on the floor Monday evening, send it to them on message calendar, they can concur with it, and we're done. That's the perfect scenario. If we're not able to come to an agreement, then we might have to pass our Senate budget on the floor and then go to a conference committee. But the last time we went to a conference committee on the budget was 2011. So we typically, try to have it worked out, beforehand. So that's hopefully what will happen.
And this is a great time to brag on Charles Sargent, because we have, in the state of Tennessee, we've run our state government like we would run a home. And we put money in savings. We're trying to get to that 8% rate. But if you look at the federal deficit and how the federal government runs their budget versus the state of Tennessee, we are one of the leaders in the nation. In every category, we're 1, 2, or 3 as far as financial stability. We are one of the best, if not, and I hope to be able to brag here in a couple of years, the best run financial states in the nation. Right. There's states all over this union that are studying us and how Tennessee does things and the decisions we make. Sometimes it's hard. It feels like we're being almost too conservative, but the end goal is to be sure we are always in that place to provide with that tax revenue for our citizens and our voters. And Charles did a great job and was just tight with that budget for so many years, and assuring that we would be in a good financial position.
Yeah, I was going to. And let me say this, Dan. I don't know if you know this, Jack, but Thursday we named the desk he sat at. That will have a plaque with him commemorating his years of service, his 8 years of service, his budget. Charles Sargent. Yes, thank you. And so where he sat on the House floor, if anybody remembers where he sat, there is a plaque now, or will be a plaque there, commemorating the Charles Sargent and his budget sub and his chair and his service to the state for 8 years. So that'll be neat. I don't know if you knew we did that or not. Okay.
That's great. Now, normally the budget's kind of the last thing to fall before you adjourn. Is that going to be the case this year?
Hope so. The way the process works is we pass the budget, and then we have quote-unquote bills behind the budget, or might still have some bills that don't have any kind of fiscal impact to them. But yes, if we can get the budget passed this coming week, we're on track to hopefully adjourn next week. But that not a promise, But that's I'm cautiously optimistic.
That's good. Just a program note here, we will have a wrap-up session next month here, because I've got about 20 other bills I'd like to talk about, and we've got about 2 minutes before I wanted to open it up for questions and answers. But we will at least have one more session just to kind of get into more detail and understand more about some of these bills that have fallen. Transportation is a huge issue for Williamson County. And Sam, you're on the Transportation Subcommittee in the House. Tell us in a lightning round.
Real quick, yes. Like they said, the way we fund things in Tennessee, we do not borrow money to build roads. Okay, that's one of the legacy of the Improve Act. And this past week, the TDOT released their 3-year multimodal transportation program. Good news is this: they will start construction this year on a new interchange at Buckner Road in Spring Hill. The federal government gave $25 million. They turned that over. The state TDOT took that, and they are they have to use that money quickly, so there will be dirt moving on a new interchange at Buckner Road. On I-65, they'll take a lot of traffic off 31. But also the good news is when TDOT puts a program on a 3-year plan, that means that it's going to be completed. So between Duplex Road in Spring Hill, all the way up to the Kroger at Mac Hatcher and the Target here in Williamson County, that made the 3-year plan. So they'll start the environmental work and then the preliminary engineering work over the next few years. So that program, new 4-lane road, US 31, is in the works. Also, in the work is the Mac Hatcher from Murfreesboro Road 96 over to US 31 there at the Kroger Mac Hatcher. That was put on there. So they will expand that from the 2 lanes to the 4 lanes. Preliminary engineering work has been authorized on that. Again, this takes time, 4, 5, 6 years, but the good news is it's paid for with money that we have saved. We did not borrow. And also Moore's Lane Interchange is put on there to upgrade that at I-65. So TDOT's moving forward on some great programs.
Another quick question. Will I-65 be 8 lanes to Buckner Road, or is it still going to be 2 lanes on either side?
I did not see that on the 3-year plan.
Driving back and forth to Culleoka a lot lately. So,
Oh, and dirt is being moved on Mac Hatcher from Hillsborough Road to 96. So that is happening.
good. Brandon, would love to get into the sports betting and the chandeliers and things. If we don't have any questions, I want to come back to that here in just a minute. But do want to open it up for questions from the floor a little bit. And I promised a lady over here that I didn't get to for 2 months in a row that I would give her first shot the next time she was here. So,
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm Janet Schaus. I live in Franklin. I'm in Brandon's district in Jax. I'm wondering, you said the Katie Beckett is a separate waiver from the block grant question. My question is, will the Katie Beckett monies and the 1915C Medicaid waivers be separate and apart from the block grant? Will those monies be protected?
Yes.
And if you need an explanation of the 1915C waivers, I'd be happy to provide it.
Ma'am, we designed this to be separate regardless which way the block grant program goes. Katie Beckett will be a Katie Beckett waiver program, standalone, funded separately. It will be its own program.
And what about the 1915C waivers?
For the block grants, I cannot answer that. I don't know that.
It's to be negotiated. But I know the governor, I know where our heart is. It will be, because we're going to go to CMS and we're going to say this is what we've got to have. And that's one thing that we've got to have.
what is a 1915C waiver?
There are 3 1915C waivers in the state of Tennessee. One is called the aggregate cap waiver, used to be known as the Arlington waiver, that served people who came out of the developmental centers. There's one called the statewide waiver, which my son is on. It provides for him 24-hour support in his own place. And he has autism, does not communicate verbally. We don't really have a good communication system. And then there's the self-determination waiver, which provides families $30,000 to help with respite care or behavioral therapy or whatever the individual needs. And my deep concern about the block grant is that the 1915C waivers will be affected and that we could be put in a very, very bad position with our son.
Just a point of reference there, gentlemen. Yes, sir. Got a Columbia State political science student here with us. Tell us your name again.
I'm Grant Marsh. My question is for all of you, if I could just get a short, quick answer. On the basis of separation of church and state, do you hold any objection to ESA money going to a student attending a religious private school?
I'm happy to answer that. Absolutely not. I don't at all. And the way the ESA program would work, the money's not coming from the government directly to a school. It's going to an account that the parent has, and the parent can decide what is the best education opportunity for my child. And that's how it works. So it's absolutely constitutional. And we've looked into that, and we've researched it. I appreciate the concern, and, that is an area where we need to be careful, but that's where we are on it.
And I agree. And so an analogy is currently at the college level. Taxpayers' money goes with the student as they choose to attend a religious school, non-religious school, et cetera. So again, it does pass constitutional muster, and we're already doing it with your age group.
And, right, the Supreme Court has approved that, but that's one of my concerns, though. What types of religious schools will pop up as a result of this to receive taxpayer money?
I'm okay with it.
Got a shy audience this morning. I've got plenty of questions to ask, so that's not a problem. But Brandon, let's talk back about the sports betting bill. A lot of everything up there seems like it's pretty controversial this year, but that one's got some lively arguments on both sides. Tell us what happened there and the position you took.
Well, I can just tell you what happened in my office is, the bill came to me, I looked at it and said, no way I'll ever touch this, I'm a hard no. And then I read it and I had to think about it for a minute, and what I came to was...
What does it actually do?
It authorizes online gaming from your mobile device. We're not going to have brick and mortar betting establishments in the state of Tennessee, but what we're going to do is basically start the process of regulating an industry that's already in existence right now. And so when I first looked at it, I thought, well, I don't like this. I go to a conservative church. I can't touch this. However, in the state of Tennessee, any potential vice industry we have stepped in and regulated. Alcohol, tobacco, things that we see as potential problematic, we've stepped in and taken a hand in that. And this is an industry that's already in existence. It's already happening. The revenue is going outside of the state of Tennessee. So what we're going to do with this bill is put some regulations and safeguards on this industry. It came to finance, and it was amended in finance. And what we did was we increased the tax rate to make this, if it passed the Senate as amended in the House and finance, it'll be the second highest taxed online sports betting in the nation. So Tennessee, we are in the Bible Belt. We're very conservative. There's some concerns about this. So if it passes, this industry is going to pay dearly to come here and do this. And it's already happening. It's not, it's happening right now from the devices, and we're simply putting some safeguards in place and helping to regulate the industry.
While you're talking, tell us about the chandeliers.
Well, that's a long story. You may want to, outside the House chamber, there's 2 holes in the ceiling. And I noticed that one day, I'm OCD about stuff. I was out there sitting, studying, and I kept looking up. It's like, why is there a hole in the ceiling?
Just a construction guy would notice that.
Yes. And then I listened to a tour one day, and I heard the story of why there was holes in the ceiling. And what happened is, as they were completing the Capitol, the war between states broke out. Those 2 lighting fixtures were ordered out of Philadelphia, and they were never shipped down to finish the building. So we've got an unfinished Capitol that's got 2 holes in the ceiling that have never been, the lights have never been hung. And if you've ever been down to the first floor where the governor's office, I literally think the state flower could be a mushroom, because it's dark down there. So it was an effort. So, would love to finish the building, but next year is the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage, where women got the right to vote. That vote was cast in Tennessee. So my thought was, we could finish the building, we could hang these lights, and we could dedicate one of these to women's suffrage. There's 2 lights. The other one we could dedicate for the folks that champion the civil rights movement.
Okay.
Part of the reason that war was fought, the building didn't get finished, should be a sweet time to do it and say, you know what, we're still working on things, we're still trying to make things right, and we're going to finish this building.
Just going to keep it in the budget, so.
It didn't get funded.
Oh, no.
But we can start talking about it, and Glenn said, Brandon, start raising some money. So we'll see.
Were they paid for when they were
Not that we can tell. But now because of it hit the newspaper, the chatter has begun, and that was part of the effort of bringing it up is just to start the chatter.
Glenn and Jack, are we going to have daylight savings time next year? Or?
I hope so. I certainly support it. The problem is, think about all the states that are contiguous to us. And so it's not something we can just do and say we're going to do. I kind of oversimplified it when I was first thinking about it. And then I had some people in the business community come in and start talking about logistics between delivering goods and computer programs that work across state lines, and just the massive confusion that this would be, because half the time if none of the states around us did it and we did it, then half of the year you're on the same time as them, and then half the year you're not, and so computers have to be changed, and as your head starts exploding thinking about the consequences. So it really, very rarely do I defer to the federal government on anything. I don't like to, but this truly is, I think, constitutionally under the purview, because it does involve interstate commerce. So I think the bill, speak to the bill, Glenn, because I've kind of lost track of it. And we all want it to happen. Maybe not everybody, but it is very, very popular. We would like to see it done, but we're going to have to work with the federal government.
We did. We sent that request to the feds in a resolution form that they would change, because think of this. If you live in Chattanooga, Knoxville, Tri-Cities, and while North Carolina, D.C., New York City, Boston goes back an hour, you in Knoxville, Chattanooga try to stay the same. So all of a sudden, the East Coast is an hour behind you. You're on the same time as Newfoundland in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. It's just not going to work in Tennessee because we're such a long state. But if the feds would say, nation, no more changing of the clocks, then it would work.
Well, if you could do me a personal favor and just make us the same time zone as East Tennessee, because when I have appointments down there, I can never keep them straight. So I missed a funeral a while back because I was an hour late, but trying to keep Eastern Central Time juggled. But we'll stay tuned for that. The couple more things. The criminal justice reform. Not been much said in the last few weeks about that. I guess we can circle back and talk about that next month. Is there anything on the bubble there that is going to change anytime soon?
I know this is the governor's initiative next year, so stay tuned. He wanted to address some education reforms and a few other reforms, and it's I like the way this governor's leading. Let's do one thing, let's focus on it, let's do it right, and then let's go to the next issue. You'll see it next year.
Okay.
I am on that committee. We've changed a lot of laws. We're trying to get people that have committed non-violent crimes out of the system quicker, because and this blew my mind when I got up there. The data shows there's a direct correlation for the fact that the longer you stay in jail, the more violent you become. So if you go in for writing bad checks, good chance if you stay in prison for a couple years, you may come out as a violent offender. So for those non-violent crimes, we're changing laws. We're trying to get them help, get them treatment, and that's going to be a main focus of the governor next year.
Okay. Same.
There's been some criticism of the governor, and it's not warranted. Is Hep C $25 million to treat prisoners? We think about 4,000 prisoners with Hep C. The reason the governor had to do that, we would face a lawsuit where we could spend up to $100 million. So this is kind of to get ahead of the ball game so it doesn't break the state budget later on. So people said, well, why are they doing this for prisoners? It's something we have to do, or we will pay for it later.
We will revisit all of these again next month. Really appreciate you gentlemen taking the time to have these conversations every month. I know you are so busy, and we just appreciate you marking out some time so that we can have some one-on-one FaceTime about all these things. Just want to thank again everyone for being here. Got several people I need to thank for making this all happen, but Vanderbilt University and AT&T kind of in a financial way helped Aspen Grove Asset Management make sure it goes on WAKM, and we appreciate those dollars behind the scenes helping things out. Our coffee sponsor is Community Coffee, I think. I got it, good. And We're so glad to be here at Columbia State. Dr. Lampley, great facility, and we like to help showcase it. Just got a beautiful place here, and anybody that's thinking about going to college needs to check out Columbia State for sure. Thanks, Creed Henderson, the WCTV crew, Tom Lawrence, and the WAKM crew, and Kel McDowell and the chamber staff, Nancy Griffin, Matt, even though we keep missing him somehow. He does make things happen behind the scenes, and we appreciate all y'all do. But hope you'll be back next month, final Friday of May. Actually, it won't be. That's the 31st, which is Memorial Day, I think, Kel. So watch your calendar, and we will be back here at the end of May for our next session to look forward to. Thank you very much.
Good job, guys.